Hi, my name is Christy Mattoon from Building Change Now. This is going to be about autoimmune disease, symptoms, the issues that go along with that, and then also how do you walk out of it? How do you start to heal? How do you go through a process and start healing your body and get yourself back to where you feel good and you can do the things you want in your life? Because autoimmune disease is such a prolific thing in our country right now. It's so huge. It can be very confusing, the matrix between medicine and nutrition and what do you don't do. So I have it as a burden on my heart to help people figure out the differences, how to understand and read their own body so they know what they need, what they don't need, what they can do, what they can't do. And it's literally just a process of starting to understand the information that's out there, and then also starting to understand and really become aware and pay attention to yourself, because only you can truly know what something is doing inside your body, whether it's helping or hurting, and you get lost so many times, especially when it's a new prescription and you end up with more symptoms than you started with. It's confusing and it's scary. Do you take it? Do you not take it? Do you move on to something else? Do you stay there and try and hang in there for 6 months and see if it changes? It's a very scary proposition. So that's what I'm here to do, is help people walk through that. I'll tell you a little bit about myself first. I went through this journey myself a number of years ago. I started out actually as an infant having an asthma attack. So inflammation was a natural part of my system right the day I was born. Came out of the womb, went straight into an iron lung having an asthma attack. And, it just kind of digressed from there, I think, with inflammation and symptoms. And nobody really understood or even addressed that with us, with the family that I was in. It wasn't knowledge or understood or anything. The food and some of the things we were eating, the things we were thinking, things we had been taught, things that my parents had been taught, the way that they were treated affected all of us. So that's part of what we want to do in getting to the root of symptoms and the understanding of disease processes. It's not just one thing. It's a big, huge, the whole scope of your life is involved here. So that's the stuff that we have to come to an understanding of. A little bit about myself, where I started out. Let's see if you can see this here, was at about 300 pounds. That was probably the height of my weight, or the last time a picture was taken at the height of my weight anyway. Excuse me. And at 300 pounds, I quit getting on the scale. I just decided I didn't want to know anymore. So from here to here, right, I didn't want to do it. So I just quit getting on the scale. I quit paying attention. And I'm sure it started getting worse before, it really got big enough that I was like, I have to do something about this. And a doctor actually had told me, this is going to end if you don't stop doing whatever it is you're doing, because my weight was just going up and up. My cholesterol was through the roof. All of my panels were a mess. My doctor actually had called me at one point a hormoneless wonder. An absolute mess, my whole system. I killed my endocrine system. Just everything in my body was crazy. So at the point I finally decided I needed to do something to change it was the point that my husband's best friend passed away. And that kind of rocked our world, actually rocked our world really hard. A lot of eye-opening, awakening right there. And so I ended up in a gym down the street that had just opened and started working out with a trainer. I ended up in front of a gentleman who understood a lot more than at that point I probably gave him credit for. But he took me from that, you can see this, to that. I was on the wall at 24-Hour Fitness for quite a while. They're the reason that I got onto the track that I was on, not only my trainer, but just a whole bunch of other people that were in that space with me, took me on a different road than I ever thought my life would be on. And it was a lot of physical changes. It was a lot of mental changes. I had to go through a process of really understanding and changing my mentality to get to where I am. On the physical side of it, what I realized was with your environment, you can change a whole lot of things. With your mentality and your environment, you can change even more things. Being a hormoneless wonder, it's an interesting journey. And so I did all the replacement therapy, and I went from that to that to that. Right? So building all the muscle, making myself as strong as I could. That was actually my mantra for a while, was just make me strong. I just wanted to be strong. And what that strength did, because I never really qualified strong as physical strength, asking for that every day made me mentally strong, made me spiritually stronger. I kept seeking more and more ways to do different things with my body, my mentality. I went after the spirituality. I went after my religious roots, kind of dissected that, and ended up in a whole different place. So I really love the Lord. I want you to know that. That is where my heart is. That's a base of a lot of where I come from. But I understand it from many different angles. And so walking out of disease and illness, because disease is not ever part of God's plan. It's not. And we hear a lot that, maybe you have that because you were here to learn a lesson. Well, we can talk about that more in detail at another time, but I kind of disagree with that idea. You will probably learn a lesson. You'll probably learn a ton of lessons that will help you get into a different path. But I don't think that's ever the reason why we get disease to start with. Usually it's because of something in your environment, something that affected you, something that you ate, something that you got into, either knowingly or unknowingly. It can happen either way. You can know that you're getting into an issue or eating something that's not going to be healthy for you. You might be eating something that you think is perfectly healthy, that people tell you are healthy, and it's affecting you horribly. It's very adverse to your system. So it's coming to a knowledge of those kind of things that will make a huge difference. So what I learned throughout my whole process, that there's 3 key shifts that you have to make in order to get yourself on a road to recovery. And those 3 key shifts will make you or break you. When you understand them and utilize them, they will put you on a path that will help you heal your symptoms. And when you don't utilize them, when you don't engage with them, you'll probably stay locked in the area that you're at with symptoms, with disease names piling up, and the cycle will go and go. So we're going to take a look at those 3 key shifts today. So the first key shift that you have to understand, that you need to utilize, is mindset. Understanding mindset. So sometimes you're locked in patterns because of what you're thinking, because of what you've been taught, because of where you came from, that keep you locked in a cycle. It keeps you locked in going in circles. And it can be positive or negative. This can happen either direction. If it's a negative mindset, a negative pattern, a negative loop that you formed, it will throw you into a negative arena. Your patterns will dictate your direction. Let me get this spelled right for you. Direction. Patterns will dictate your direction. What direction are you going? And if it's concerning your health, are your symptoms piling up? What is the pattern that you're stuck in that's making your direction and helping you gain more symptoms, get more disease names, right? Every time you go into the doctor, are you getting a new diagnosis? Is this part of the issue? Right? Do you know if it's part of the issue? This is some of the stuff we would want to find out. So from your patterns to your direction, whatever direction you're going is going to determine your outcome. And let's think about your outcome in the moment, right? So for right now today, what are you in? What are you doing? What do you look like? How do you feel? It's your outcome. Can I make my outcome different tomorrow? Absolutely. Change the pattern, change your direction, change your outcome. Right? And if it's an unknown pattern, if you're locked into something like this, just keeps happening and it keeps happening and it keeps happening, but you don't know why, that's something we need to sit down and figure out. It becomes very, very important to know what those patterns are and then moving them, getting rid of them so you can move on and come to a different outcome. In our country, our food industry, it's a over $800 billion industry, the food is. And a lot of times the patterns that we get locked into are because of the food we're eating. From childhood all the way up to adulthood, we're told over and over and over about what we should eat, that this is good for you. You see it on TV, the commercials over and over as you were a child. And sometimes those things actually get locked in our head. We seriously think that Fruit Loops are good for us. We just want them. We saw it for years as a kid. It's just this thing locked in your system. Right? And there's different things. Pop-Tarts, another one of those things. What was it? Coke and a Smile. On that commercial, they were actually teaching us that if you drank Coke, you would look like those beautiful people on that commercial back in the 70s, wearing the white flowy robes, you know, the cotton dresses, standing on the green grassy hillside. So seeing those things over and over will lock you in a mindset. And that's just kind of a small smattering of it. If you've had trauma in your life, if you've been in situations, seen things, had things happen to you, and they've locked you into a mindset, it still happens the same way. It will start patterns, it will throw you into a direction, and it will determine your outcome. So those are the things that we need to know about and start to work on. You need to know about and start to work on. So this food industry, we're going to talk about our nutrition for a few minutes, basically kind of gave us a status quo. They told us how to eat, they told us what was healthy for us, and one of the things is the USDA's recommended breakfast. Think about that one. What were we told to eat for years? It was a glass of orange juice, a couple eggs, some meat, usually bacon, sausage, or ham, toast, glass of milk, right? And you can see the spread. It was on the commercial every morning, right? Or it was in a magazine, or it was, you know, I don't even know. You always heard about this. But unfortunately, what we know now is that's the perfect way to set you up for a disease process. In the meats that we were eating, it was full of nitrates and nitrites. It was full of all kinds of chemicals from what they were feeding the animals, the hormones. The stress load on the animals affects our bodies. We never thought about that kind of stuff. The sugar from the orange juice overloaded our system, and then we'd go have a Coke at lunchtime. We were eating bread at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Right, and it's just sugar in your system, so we're totally overloaded with sugar. And it started this disease process that just kind of keeps ramping up and going and going. And you can't continue to eat the way you think you can and expect health. You can't continue to eat all of these things that we've been taught and told over and over that we can eat and expect to regain a healthy situation. So we're going to talk about key number 2, which is nutrition. The nutrition that you're eating brings a whole new environment to your body. Nutrition. So we know for disease that the underlying issue is usually inflammation. Inflammation usually it can start for many, many reasons, but from a gut level, with intestinal permeability from like leaky gut syndrome, if you have ton of candida in your system. It can start for different reasons, but the outlying outcome is the same. We're going to end up in a disease process. So we want to talk about the different ways with nutrition that this affects you. So number 1 is your food and the toxic load that you're getting from this food. This toxic load in your system just ramps up and ramps up. If you keep putting the toxins in your body, it's going to keep the disease process growing and growing. So how do you stop that process? And this sounds very simplistic, but this is basically how it works. You take out the food that has the toxins, and you eat food that will heal. Foods that will heal. So herbs, green food, foods that's not GMO, foods that don't have processed chemicals and poisons in them, right? And we'll talk about that more in just a second too. And you have to, this is another part of this, is you have to know the difference between foods that are giving you toxic load and foods that are going to heal you. You have to know the difference. So what is the difference? Do you know what you're eating on a daily basis? Do you know what you're putting into your body? So the first thing we're going to talk about is the processed food that you get out of the center of the grocery store. And it's literally as simple as that. Walk into the grocery store and just start picking up stuff and reading it. Look at the back of the containers before you buy them. If they have tons of chemicals and tons of words you can't pronounce, and you've probably heard this over and over and over, don't buy it. Don't ignore that stuff. This is part of the mentality change. We were kind of dumbed down, and there's no kind of to it. We were dumbed down, and taught that it was okay. You know, a little bit's not going to hurt you. If you have that one little package, you're going to be fine. That little bit's not going to be a bad thing. But we don't stop there. You know, if you've heard of bliss points, you understand the process that these manufacturers came up with, where they amped up the sugar load, they amped up the salt, they amped up the fat in order to create this sensation in our brain that just made us want to go back for more. It basically started people being addicted to foods. So that whole process started with a manufacturing scheme in order to get people to eat more. And you can read about that. You know, Google it, right? In this age of technology, take a look at that. They started with little tiny kids and seeing what it took to satiate and over-satiate their brains to the point that they wouldn't want to stop eating a certain item. And that's where our whole food processes come from. So we want to make sure, you know, walking in and out of the grocery store, that you are not continually eating the foods that have all the toxic waste in them. It's the chemicals, it's the food colorings, you know, the pretty cakes with all the bright, bright colors on them. Horrible poisons for your system. So that's the first thing you need to look at, is the food in the center of the grocery store. And granted, right now our country is in a huge movement with manufacturers to produce and put things in the store that we can actually eat. It's kind of cool actually to watch all the non-GMO, you know, they'll tell you that what they took this chemical out, or they're using good chicken, or, you know, it's really interesting watching the change, because so many people are like looking at that stuff going, I don't want to be sick anymore, I'm not going to eat that. So it's a great place to start. Go home and empty your cupboards out. What's in your cupboards? What's sitting in there? So, you know, another place to start is clean your cupboards out. Get into your kitchen. Anything that you won't eat, get rid of it. Don't leave it inside the house where it might turn into a temptation just because it was something you loved as a child. The second thing we want to look at is GMOs. What are GMOs? GMOs are genetically modified organisms, right? We've heard a ton about GMOs and Monsanto. I forget the other company name, but there's a few of them that are genetically modifying the produce that's in your supermarket. When you look at it, you can't really tell the difference, right? If you don't know, if you're shopping in just the organic area, you should be fine, because there's laws about the labeling on that end of it. But there's also, you know, the DARK Act was just passed thanks to our president. And having signed that into office allowed some of these manufacturers not to tell us these things. But the first thing you want to know about GMOs is the Bt toxins. It's the corn, soy, cotton. The Bt toxin modified stuff is genetically engineered to automatically reproduce the toxin. So they've genetically engineered these plants to reproduce the toxin in it so it kills the bug. So the bug lands on it, the bug dies. Well, nobody really thought through it a whole ton, and how it's turning out is that chemical, that modification to the plant, is also tearing apart our guts. So it's not only killing the bug that landed on the plant, it's killing your intestinal flora, and it's burning holes in your gut. Literally, what I've heard with the bugs is it's eating holes in their exoskeleton. Imagine what that does into your intestines. So permeability on a whole different level right there. The second GMO is Roundup Ready, which means the plant itself is resistant to Roundup. It's resistant to the glyphosate. So you can spray and spray and spray for all the bugs and weeds and everything they want and never actually affect that plant. But then you go and eat that plant, and what are you eating? You're eating that Roundup. You're eating all the stuff that they sprayed on it and has soaked into those plants. And again, it just tears your gut up. It's killing your gut flora. It's killing the flora of the ground that these plants are grown in. So for generations to come, how long are we going to have to suffer with a ground that has no good organism in it because we kept spraying it with Roundup? It's just a bad idea all the way around. And the last one has nothing to do with pesticides. The last one, they're modifying for effect. They're modifying for enhancement. So it's about the shapes, the size, the colors. It's a consistency that the consumer is supposedly looking for without any, you know, the dings from the weather maybe. They want everything to look perfect. And I don't know whoever told them that that was such an issue to us, but I would much rather see an apple with a few dings or bug footprints on it, or, you know, maybe it's misshapen a little bit, than have one that's full of chemicals and poisons. And what they've done to modify these to do this is they've put on either side of it what they call a promoter on either side of the gene. And what these promoters do is it wakes up the trait in the gene. So if they're trying to brighten the color, they're trying to make it bigger, they're trying to get the shape all the same growing on a plant, these promoters wake up that gene, so that's what it specifically does. What we're starting to wonder is, with these promoters, what is that doing in our systems and in our bodies? And especially with the younger population, what is this doing to our children? You know, the increase in childhood diseases is so rampant and on the rise. It's really starting to become a curious question. Are those promoters part of the cause? Are those promoters waking up latent genes in these kids and stuff that maybe should never have been woken up and causing a lot of this disease and illness? So it's kind of a scary thing. Take those out, and you know, the goal is kind of to get you back to your original blueprint. The goal is to get you back to a place of health and back to a place where you're not dealing with these kind of issues. So the GMOs. The other thing that we want to look at is, let's see, what was the other one? It was center of the grocery store, GMOs, and Nightshades. So, and these are actually can be, you know, awesome foods. But if you're a person that's struggling with symptoms, if you're a person that's struggling in autoimmune issues, Nightshades, this classification of food, can really be a detriment to your system. It can really be, and potentially very toxic actually to our systems. Two of the big ones that we'll talk about is tomato and potatoes. Tomatoes and potatoes. These two right here, and because it's such a huge part of our meal, many of our meals in the United States. Think about French fries and ketchup. You know, we're years eating steak and potatoes over and over and over. If you've got an autoimmune issue and you're putting these two in your system, it's probably messing up your immunity. It's jacking with your body in ways you don't realize. And we go into that more later too, on the infrastructure with that and how that actually works in your system. The question would be, if you took Nightshades out of your meal plan, and there's quite a few different things. Peppers are included in this. Eggplant is included in this. It messes with your immune system. If you've got a body already fighting with its immunity and building antibodies to things and going crazy, what happens if you take the Nightshades out and let the body calm down? And this is one of the unknowing things that people don't really get with their nutrition. If you're struggling in symptom and disease, and this is part of the problem, and people will look at me and say, but tomatoes, specifically tomatoes and potatoes, but tomatoes are healthy. You know, they've got lutein in them. You hear a lot about that. It's supposed to be great for you. I don't want to take that out. Well, for you, if you're autoimmune, I would take it out and just see how your body reacts. It might be an issue. It might not be. But the only way you will ever fully know is if you take it out of your body, let it calm down, reintroduce it, and see what happens. So that becomes part of the shuffle, is taking things out, letting your body sit, let it calm down, let it start a healing process, let it reset its natural healing processes, so that you continue down into a path of health. If you leave these in just because you were taught that tomatoes are good, you're probably going to continue to struggle. So until you know, you don't really know. So nutrition is the second key. The third key is about cleansing your system. Cleansing your system to get rid of the toxic load that you have built up from a lifetime of eating foods that have chemicals, pesticides, and poisons in them. Let's see if we can get that on here. So the third key is cleansing. And in this, it's also going to be about understanding your toxic load. So cleansing the system and understanding your toxic load. The toxic load is just a huge burden of the body. If your body is burdened in any way, guess what happens? You get tired and it wears out. All right? So it's just a huge burden of the body. So we want to cleanse the body in order to get rid of that toxic load. You release these toxins through a process of cleansing. So it's going to be about this release and how to do that. So when you're releasing these toxins, there's a protocol. There's a lot of different ones you can look up. There's tons of products on the market you can use to do this. But it's a process of systematically going through the organs, going through the systems of your body, and letting them clear out the toxic load, and then giving them a period of time and space to heal. Okay, it's a process of systematically going through them. Where do you start? Usually the colon and intestines. Right? Why would we start there? We'd start with the colon and intestines because, first of all, it's where everything exits. If that's clogged up and you clean something like your liver or kidneys first, where's the toxic load going to go? Right? It's going to go out into your body. So we want that to have a clear path to escape your body. You also start here because it's one of the first places that disease starts. Right? Everything goes into your system through your gut. Everything gets released into the bloodstream by the action of your gut. So we can clean this out, get the toxins out of it, make room for the other toxins from your organs to escape its body, let this heal up, you're going to start to see and notice difference in your symptomology, which will affect the disease names that you have. Right? So intestines and colon, and then it would be liver and gallbladder, and then moving into your kidneys, cleansing things like parasites, cleansing out the heavy metals of your body, and it would be systematically going through those to release those and let them come out of your body and give your body that space to heal. The other thing we would look at doing, and kind of all at the same time, is looking at healing low-level infections. I don't know how many years my doctor would do a test and say, oh, you seem to have a low-level infection. Let's put you on an antibiotic and see if we can get rid of that. She never could tell me what the low-level infection was or where it was. I just had something in my system she was looking at with my blood panels and telling me that there was this low level of infection. I never really found out what that was, or I knew the symptoms it caused. You know, it caused really crazy symptoms. I get the rash on the skin. I get all kinds of weird swelling, like pockets of swelling under my skin. You know, just, I don't know, different things that went on. And so, you know, put you on more antibiotics to calm that down and change that. Now I use herbs. If I end up with an infection, I go straight for my cabinet of herbs. Fresh oils, the healing oils you hear so much about, in supplement form, and have totally wiped out any of that kind of stuff in my system, so I don't have to deal with that anymore. And then it would be about killing the yeast and the candida and the fungus, that kind of stuff in your system, and again, all at the same time. So once we start changing the nutrition, because of what you're eating, it's going to start this natural process in your body, where by changing this nutrition, changing the stuff you're putting in, you're going to eliminate toxins already. So then your body's going to start releasing the toxins that are in there because we're putting in good fuel and good food that'll help that stuff start to move. We're going to get some good cell regeneration going on. The sugars are going to start moving out of your body, and things are going to start to slowly change. And that's what you really want to get to, is that process of change. A pill can't do this. A doctor can't run a test to tell you how to do this. You know, it's kind of something that everybody, and you hear a lot of people talking about this right now, that have done it for themselves and seen the changes and the differences. And you have to find this tract and this system to go through to get yourself to a place of health. So what I want to offer you, being a coach, being a physical coach, first of all, and being a health coach, being a life coach to people. I've walked a lot of people through this. One of my favorite stories is about a gal named Bobby, who actually, because of the way she started eating, for years exercising, she was strong as a mountain, but could never quite move the weight. She had type 2 diabetes. She was on a pump. Finally, with nutrition, got her off the pump, and it was shifts that her doctor probably never would have told her to make. She had to fight through some fear because they told her how many carbohydrates she needed to eat daily, and it turned out that that didn't work in her system. It just kept her body full of sugar. So when she lowered that, she lowered the sugar resistance, she lowered her body's capacity to hang on to the sugar. She upped her body's capacity to use its own metabolism, to burn the sugar, to get that stuff out of her system. She got off her pump, off her medications, and is absolutely amazing. My friend Mark had issues in his body, and the same thing. By changing his nutrition, all of a sudden his whole life path changed, his symptomology changed, and he's on a totally different direction than when he started out. So it's all of these things, and just knowing and understanding where to step, and then being brave, right? It's being brave and boldly stepping into territories that doctors would say, oh, you know, maybe not, let's stay, this is what's recommended. Well, what if the recommendation doesn't work inside of you? So that's what I want to help you figure out, and what I want to help you do. If this is something that you're interested in, if this is something you think would help you, I would love to offer you a free 45 minutes of my time to help you figure out how to get on this path, to help you figure out if there's a way that you can start to manipulate your own body and the system in order to gain your health back. If this is something you would like to do, I want you to go here. And there should be a button to click over on the sidebar that you can click on and do this also, but you can write this down. So it's meetme.so/building change now. All one word. meetme.so/building change now. And that's going to take you to my scheduler. So go ahead and go in there and just find a time that works for you. Once you pick a time, please write it into your calendar. I don't want to waste your time any more than you want to waste mine. So put it in your calendar and then be ready for that phone call. Have a piece of paper and a pencil handy, you know, so you can take notes and write stuff down. If we hit on something key, we'll dive into it a little bit more and see how far we can take you and give you a different way to look at things. After you fill out, or after you go in and schedule an appointment, there's going to be a little questionnaire to fill out. It'll redirect you over to this questionnaire. That'll help us get started into the session quickly and easily. So please go ahead and fill that out too, as much as you can, or as much as you feel comfortable filling out. And then that'll give us a place to start and a springboard to kind of step off of once we're on the call. And then within this call, I'm onboarding new people right now into a program that I run people through. It's a program to find health, to change out all these things in your system that we just talked about, to gain a bigger understanding and a broader depth of what it is you need to do in order to take care of your symptoms and your diagnosis. So if that's something you feel like would be for you, and I think you would be good fit into the program, we'll talk about that too. So go ahead and get on this call. Book it over here at meetme.so/building change now. Let's discuss these 3 shifts and where this applies to your life. And I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you for being on this webinar, and thank you for staying till the end. I can't wait to meet you, and I can't wait to help you get on a road to health.